London has just dropped plans for what might be the most ambitious pedestrianisation project in its history. Nearly 3 kilometres or 2 miles of West End streets will go from looking like this to something like this. Or from this to this. Let's just dive straight in. So the plan covers the entirety of Regent Street from the BBC all the way down to St James's Park. Regent Street itself, the bit that kind of connects Oxford Circus and Piccadilly Circus, is going to remain open to traffic. Of course, it was only last week that the Mayor confirmed that Oxford Street would also be fully pedestrianised. I'll provide a little bit more information on that in a sec. So the pedestrianisation of central London, or certainly of the West End, seems to be gathering pace. But what we've now heard is that Regent St St James, which connects Piccadilly Circus southwards to St James's Park, will also be pedestrianised, as well as a few kind of side roads coming off that main corridor as well. But really, every part of this new plan will see improvements for pedestrians, even on streets that won't be fully pedestrianised. So let's start here at Waterloo Place down towards kind of St James's Park. This is a really special part of town because it's a 6,000 square metre sort of square that was designed to be perfectly symmetrical. And when you're there on the ground, it's quite easy to see how this could be one of London's finest squares. Yet, I'm going to be honest, I've walked through here loads of times and I've never really noticed any of these buildings before. And at first I was kind of like, oh, that's really bad for a guy that is obsessed with cities and architecture like I am to have walked through this square in my own city and never really noticed how impressive this space is. But then I thought, oh wait, no, I think that's actually because it's not pedestrianised, because it's quite a stressful environment, because it's used as a sort of a place for cars and people to pass through, because it's sort of designed more as a car park than a public square. I think that might be one of the reasons why I've never actually noticed it before. But having seen these plans to improve it and to pedestrianise it, I'm now excited to see what will probably become one of London's greatest squares come into reality. Moving up from Waterloo Place, we get Regent St St James's, and this again is the street that kind of leads down from Piccadilly Circus. I'll point it out on a map. And this too is a sort of a continuation of sort of, I think it was John Nash, his original kind of vision for Regent Street, stretching along down from kind of Oxford Circus down towards St James's Park. So either side of this street, you have these really impressive buildings that all kind of sit harmoniously together architecturally. They're all of the same style, they're all of the same size. So we'll finally be able to better appreciate this vast stretch of impressive buildings marching down from Piccadilly Circus down to St James's Park. And the consultation document for this scheme, which I'll link in the description, lists several places worldwide that they're kind of using for inspiration for the pedestrianisation of Regent St St James. And one of them is this street in Seville, which has been recently pedestrianised as well. But really what this focuses on is the sort of the pedestrian priority, the pedestrian environment in these places. So you've got these restaurants and cafes to spill out, wide pedestrian areas with these kind of buildings either side. And the buildings on this street in Seville, again, look very similar to the ones that we'll see at Regent Street. So this is a great precedent, I think, for how this street could end up looking in future. So that means you'll be able to walk all the way from Piccadilly Circus down to St James's Park without seeing a car or having to cross a road. And another exciting thing about this part of the project is that a lot of these side roads coming off Regent St St James, like St James's Market, will also be pedestrianised. And there is already some form of kind of pedestrianisation in these areas, but there are still some streets that are kind of open to traffic. So presumably these will be totally closed, and it says they're going to create a kind of a market or a sort of a food and beverage area. So I'm imagining that they're going to create something a little bit like Carnaby Street, with all these restaurants and bars kind of spilling into the street. Now moving on up to Piccadilly Circus, now this will remain open to traffic. However, Coventry Street, which currently connects Piccadilly Circus with Haymarket, is going to be closed. Pedestrianising Coventry Street is also going to have a huge impact on the amount of pedestrian space at Piccadilly Circus. That whole area in front of the fountain and in front of the London Pavilion is going to be completely opened up. The plan also says that they're going to reconfigure the crossings at Piccadilly Circus to make them kind of flow with the space a little bit better. They're going to restore the Eros fountain in the middle of Piccadilly Circus, and they're going to improve the sort of the public realm there as well. They've also posted this picture of Piccadilly Circus at night, so they're going to be improving the sort of the lighting at Piccadilly Circus as well. And this picture seems to suggest that they're going for a kind of a warm ambience to the lights. I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen. Obviously at Piccadilly Circus at the moment it's all very bright and kind of flashy and things like that. You can see some tree uplighters there, maybe some lights in the arches and things like that, but really kind of bringing this area even more to life at night. And really Piccadilly Circus is the heart of the West End at night. It's where everyone kind of flocks to, so creating a bit more space for pedestrians to sort of relax and to dwell in this area can only be really good. Moving on to Regent Street itself, the bit that kind of connects Oxford Circus with Piccadilly Circus, that sort of main drag of Regent Street, that is going to remain open to two-way traffic. However, there will be significant improvements. So the render suggests all of these kind of trees will be planted along there, lots of new planting, particularly in the sort of the side streets coming off Regent Street, like New Burlington Street there, which will also be pedestrianised. And yeah, lots of new plants, lots of new bushes and sort of greenery and things like that, lots of new planting. And as part of widening those pavements, they are also talking about removing the sort of the central pavement that you have running along Regent Street there. That's bad news for anyone who likes to stand in the middle of the road and take pictures with the sort of the Christmas lights or the flags that they often have kind of in the middle of Regent Street there. Just thinking about it now, that is probably the reason why Westminster Council want to kind of remove the central reservation. I can't imagine it's very safe having people sort of squeezed in between the buses, taking pictures and things. But yeah, that seems to be the plan. And as with other parts of this plan, the most exciting aspect of it for me is not necessarily the pedestrianisation of these main streets. It's actually the fact that a lot of the side streets coming off the main drag will also be pedestrianised. For instance, let's have a look at Eyre Street, which is this incredible side street that comes off the sort of the Regent Street quadrant there. There's this incredible archway designed by architect John Nash, which kind of sits above the street. And really, you can't appreciate it enough just yet because it is still open to traffic. It's not a busy road, but just creating a little bit more space for pedestrians along this small street will really allow that arch to sort of breathe and allow people to sort of appreciate it a bit more. But the plan also calls for the pedestrianisation of Princes Street, New Burlington Street and Swallow Street, which are all filled with impressive buildings and pubs, bars and restaurants that can spill into the street and really properly activate it once it becomes pedestrianised. And if you look at all of these streets, you can sort of see how they bear some resemblance to Carnaby Street, which is one of the most loved parts of the West End. And part of the reason it's so well loved is because it's pedestrianised. We can't imagine a time when Carnaby Street was open to traffic because it just feels so right being pedestrianised. And that's how I think we'll feel about a lot of these places that are going to get pedestrianised as part of this plan. We'll kind of look back on it in 5-10 years and sort of wonder why we didn't do it a long time ago. Another place they've used as kind of inspiration for Regent Street and for the sort of the wider area is this one in Barcelona. I'm not going to try and pronounce any of these, by the way. And again, some of the places that they've used as inspiration for this plan are in kind of Amsterdam, Barcelona, Vienna, Seville, these places that have vastly improved their kind of public realm offer over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think there's a general feeling among City Hall and at Westminster Council that London's West End has kind of fallen behind a little bit over the last 10 to 15 years. And although the city has come back to life after the pandemic, maybe these places just need a little bit of investment, a little bit of improving here and there to properly ensure that they're maximising their full potential. Because if you look at Regent Street, it is easily one of the most beautiful streets in the world. And so putting in trees and wider pavements and just kind of improving the public realm a little bit can only really improve that. And I'm looking forward to seeing more detailed plans as the months go on. But yeah, using kind of Seville, Vienna, Amsterdam, these kind of places that we constantly see feature at the top of the sort of the livable cities index can only be a good thing for London. Moving on kind of northwards, we get to Oxford Circus, and of course it was only last week that it was confirmed by the mayor that Oxford Street is going to be pedestrianised as well. He said he's received North Korean levels of support, which he said it like 4 times as well in this one article that I read. I'll share the article. But yeah, North Korean levels of support. Pedestrianisation itself won 66% support, and the sort of the creation of this mayoral development corporation around Oxford Street won 66% support as well. I wouldn't call 66% support North Korean, but then I probably wouldn't call anything North Korean if I'm honest. It's actually more of the street will be pedestrianised now than previously thought. I'll put a map here, but the first section to be pedestrianised is going to be Orchard Street to Great Portland Street. Oxford Circus itself isn't going to be pedestrianised because of course Regent Street isn't going to be pedestrianised, so you're still going to get cars and buses going through Oxford Circus. And then the kind of the eastern section, Oxford Circus to Tottenham Court Road, that is going to come as part of a later phase. And this comes off the back of a consultation that was launched in February this year that got a lot of support, and that includes the chief executive of IKEA, who said that it's going to create a more welcoming environment for their shoppers, the director of Selfridges, the new West End company, and the managing director of John Lewis. So all of these kind of major retailers along Oxford Street wrote their letters of support and said that they predicted that it was going to be a good thing for the street and a good thing for the businesses along it. However, the London Taxi Drivers Association voiced their concerns, basically kind of saying that the closure of this street would only lead to more traffic on surrounding streets. But really, the bulk of traffic along Oxford Street at the moment is just kind of buses and taxis. I think I said in my previous video on Oxford Street, don't go and watch that, it's an absolute dumpster fire. But in that last video, there's only 35 buses an hour that actually run along the route anymore. They've rerouted a lot of the buses. There used to be 130 buses an hour along Oxford Street, now there's only 35. They've rerouted a lot of them already in anticipation of pedestrianisation. So I think the remainder of those bus routes will obviously just be rerouted as well. So what's next for Oxford Street? Detailed traffic proposals are going to be released later in the year that will kind of say how these kind of bus routes are going to be rerouted, and it's kind of likely that the mayor will want the full stretch to be pedestrianised before his term ends in 2028. And that's going to open up a lot of room to do a lot of fun things with. I know there's going to be a lot of trees. They've already said they're going to plant a lot of trees and sort of greenery and things like that. But really, each block could have a different sort of use. So we can have maybe a space for events in one part of it, maybe a fountain or something like that, maybe parks and greenery. But they may also be quite limited by the need for kind of emergency services, deliveries and things like that. Off the back of my previous Oxford Street video, one of my subscribers wrote in this proposal, which was his idea to kind of have this circular balcony above Oxford Circus itself with these kind of impressive steps leading down onto Oxford Street itself. Kind of reminds me of those steps that you have in Times Square, allowing people to kind of appreciate the John Nash architecture surrounding Oxford Circus and Regent Street and things like that. It would be this elevated pedestrianised bridge, and this might seem like a crazy plan, but it's these kind of ideas that make London what it is. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when they suggested building the London Eye. Like, what, you want to build a Ferris wheel across from a World Heritage Site? Are you mad? There's clearly a lot of space that's going to be open to pedestrians now, a lot more space that we can get creative with. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts as well. And thank you to Keith Howard who wrote me that suggestion. And then moving north from Oxford Circus, we get to the BBC and All Souls Church. They're going to close two of these sort of side streets, and again, just give that church way more breathing room, widen the pavement significantly, and create a place that people want to spend some time in rather than just walking through as quick as they can. So yeah, I'm most excited to see the pedestrianisation of Waterloo Place. I think this is going to be a really impressive place, sort of like you see in a lot of European cities. I was in Barcelona recently. Definitely going to be a video about Barcelona coming soon, or not soon, in a few months when I get around to it. But we were in Placemaking, sorry for the pronunciation, which is this very, very symmetrical, very architecturally harmonious kind of square, which is beautiful. And looking at Waterloo Place, I think we could be looking at creating something similar to Placemaking, and maybe we'll get kind of, yeah, restaurants and bars surrounding the area. You have that monument already, maybe there'll be space for kind of a fountain or something like that. And the fact that they're drawing inspiration from these cities like Vienna and Seville and Barcelona and Amsterdam fills me with a great deal of confidence. These are the cities that London needs to be emulating if we're going to continue being a prosperous, healthy, green, progressive city. And yeah, towards the end of the consultation document itself, Westminster Council kind of say that these areas are cultural hubs for London, and without bold, future-focused investment, these iconic streets risk falling behind, which is, yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier. They also mention that the area, the kind of the West End area, supports 94,000 jobs and adds £11.3 billion of value added for the economy every single year. And so keeping these areas competitive is important for London to retain its global edge. But yeah, if you want to share your views, I've posted a link in the description to the consultation document. Of course, I also want to hear your views, so please do leave them in the comments below. This is a project that I'm really interested in. It's something that I think is going to vastly improve London over time, so I am planning to do kind of future videos whenever this project gets updated, so please subscribe below if you want to stay up to date on this project. I recently did this video, which I think you might like, which is about what is going to replace Box Park in Shoreditch, or this video here, which you might like as well. But otherwise, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.